I'm Shauna Rosner, your host of In-House Counsel Chronicles. Today, my guest is Michele Abraham. Michele attended Denison University, where she received a BA in economics and earned a joint JD MBA from Case Western Reserve University School of Law in 2003. Started her legal career in private practice at an AmLaw 200 firm and moved in-house with the Timken Company, where she worked for almost 10 years before moving to Cooper Standard, where she worked for almost 5 years, and then took on her current position with Lineage as VP of Global Corporate Compliance and Ethics. Welcome to the podcast, Michele.
Thank you, Shauna. Very much looking forward to today's conversation.
As am I. I want to start off by asking you, did you always want to be an in-house attorney?
This question made me smile because I don't think I knew what an in-house attorney was until I was actually practicing as a young associate at Thompson Hine in Cleveland. In fact, most of my career, I would say, has been an evolution. And based upon those life and work experiences, I found new careers and new avenues to careers that really piqued my interest. And at Thompson Hine, early on, as young lawyers, the firm invested in our education. And as part of that, we learned about great client service and what it meant for our clients who were in house lawyers and what they needed from us as private practice lawyers to support their business and the legal needs that they were facing. So it wasn't much until much later in my career that I even had the role of an in house lawyer on my radar screen and thought it may be a good place for me to continue to grow and develop and add value.
So when you were at Thompson Hine, what area were you practicing in?
So I joined during the internet law.com boom. And so I actually joined the firm as a member of the e-business practice, which ultimately became a part of the business litigation practice. And I was spending my time doing some business litigation, but actually most of it focusing on e-business consulting, privacy law compliance, and the like. And that was really when I got the opportunity to get more exposure to in-house life because I was spending time with our clients, helping them develop their privacy compliance programs, which necessitated a lot of time on site with those clients and spending time with their business partners.
I see. I was wondering how you got that compliance kind of bug and expertise, and that's where it started. Tell us about your in-house journey from Thompson Hine to your current position.
Sure. So when I was at Thompson Hine, as I mentioned, I was splitting my time between traditional business litigation, which I like to look as a little bit more of a rear view take on lawyering, right? So you're typically at a place where clients have reached an impasse or in a conflict, and you're looking at how you're going to mitigate damages and ultimately get the company back on path. The compliance lens, by contrast, is proactive. So you're working with clients to understand their business environment, educate them, and ultimately prevent risk. And that was where I really found myself kind of in the flow, is how I like to describe it. It came very naturally to me. And there's an element of it that has education and training in it. And so it felt like I was actually adding value by helping people understand concepts they may not have been familiar with and applying it to their day to day. So as I was working at Thompson Hine and spending time really focused on clients, I started to realize that that was the natural path for me to pursue. And that's again when I saw the opportunity with in-house counsel and making that move from private practice to a company. At the time, I was chairing the Women in the Law section at the Cleveland Bar Association and was just openly networking with not only my peers, but some of the recruiters that were members in the group. And they had talked about the opportunity at Timken. Timken was looking to formalize their ethics and compliance program and hire a dedicated leader for that team. I wasn't quite sure that I was ready to take on an hour-long daily commute. We were living just south of Cleveland, and that was about 50 miles from my home. But my husband and I at the time talked about it and decided it was at least worth going on an informational interview to see if it was a good fit. And as they always say, it's the people that you work for. I knew right away that the team at Timken not only was committed to establishing a strong ethics and compliance program, but interested in developing their team of lawyers to have professional growth and grow within the organization. And so I took the leap. It was a big leap. The path at a law firm is very clear. You're on the partner track. You understand the steps that are in your future to succeed. My contrast in-house life is a very traditional business environment. And so it was a big change. But as I mentioned, it was about the people. So I joined Timken. I was a junior lawyer and ultimately rose to have full leadership for the program. Timken was broken up by a shareholder activist and split into two separately publicly traded companies. And so I went on to stay with Timken and had full responsibility for the ethics and compliance program after my boss retired. At around the 10-year mark, I was starting to look for additional challenges and responsibilities, and actually received a call from the general counsel at Cooper Standard. They had seen the work that I had done at Timken to earn World's Most Ethical Company recognition and were interested in evolving their program. They had the fundamentals in place, but really wanted to take it to the next level. The position had the opportunity to be remote. So I live in Cleveland and Cooper Standard is headquartered in Detroit. This was pre-COVID when working remote was not as common of an arrangement and certainly not for in-house lawyers. But I had the opportunity to meet with the CEO as well as some senior leaders and became very confident that they were comfortable with their compliance officer working remotely. And what I really hooked on to that I think is an important message for all of us as we come to work every day, whether you're in headquarters or a remote location, is that in a global environment, where we sit is not as important as how we work. And so the CEO's position was if my compliance officer lives in Cleveland and we can't have a successful program, I have a much bigger problem running a global operation. And so that was an inspiration for me. I had driven every day to the headquarters at Timken. So it was a mindset shift and one that really gave me some additional leverage, knowing that he had that much support for the compliance program. And so from there, we did continue to enhance and ultimately earned World's Most Ethical Company recognition at Cooper Standard as well. While I was there, so as I mentioned, Cooper Standard is headquartered just outside of Detroit. Lineage, where I now lead the corporate compliance and ethics program, is also headquartered just outside of Detroit. And a recruiter had reached out to me through the referral of one of my peers in the industry. Lineage was preparing for their initial public offering and needed to formalize their existing ethics and compliance program. So the responsibility for the elements of the program had existed throughout different parts of the legal department and HR functions. And as part of public company compliance, they really needed to have a centralized function. So I spoke with the recruiter. It was a compelling opportunity. Actually, the prior CFO at Lineage had worked at Cooper Standard. And so there were some team members that were familiar and met with the executive team and was really excited about the opportunity. I had worked in very mature organizations prior to Lineage. So both Timken and Cooper Standard had been public companies for many decades, had a long history and experience with control frameworks and all of the elements of an effective ethics and compliance program. Lineage, by contrast, was relatively new, founded in 2000, was standing up their control framework. So rather than coming in and needing to fix, I was in the position of designing and implementing. And at this stage in my career, that was a really compelling opportunity for me to come in and make a difference. And I have just been at the height of my career. I truly, every day, there's a new challenge. It can be chaotic at times, but we did have our successful IPO last year. We were the largest IPO of 2024 and the largest REIT IPO ever. And I'm really proud of the work of not only my team in the ethics and compliance space, but our entire legal department for supporting the organization on that journey towards public company registration.
That's amazing. I remember you telling me about that, and so glad you shared it. Tell us a little bit more about Lineage as a company, what they do, and what your role is there. I mean, I think some of us know what compliance is, but what's the day-to-day like? What's on your plate?
So Lineage is a cold food storage and transportation company. So we move almost all of the food that is in your refrigerators and freezers. We keep it safe and cold. And we help distribute it not only throughout North America, but the world. So we have two distinct industries that we're working in terms of warehousing and transportation and logistics. I lead the corporate compliance and ethics program. We're a part of the legal safety and compliance organization rolling up under our chief legal officer. And as I like to say, I'm on the proactive side, right? So I'm the ambassador for our code of conduct. My team works to develop training and education for our team members so they understand their responsibilities. We foster our speak up culture. So at Lineage, we talk about living our values and we connect our ethics reporting resources back to each of our values to talk about how we live our values by speaking up to either ask questions or report misconduct that indicates that we may not be living our values. We do a lot of work on the risk management side. So when I joined the organization, I conducted a program assessment to see where we were in terms of the elements of an effective compliance program, and then put together a 3-year strategy. One key piece of which was our legal and compliance risk assessment that ultimately informed our priorities around the traditional corporate compliance and ethics risks, such as antitrust compliance, anti bribery, anti corruption compliance, our sanctions screening work. And so again, really looking at that proactive side to identify and then prevent, detect, and mitigate risks. I also oversee our investigations. So when something does go wrong, we have a team of individuals that has a process that helps ensure that we're taking in, triaging, and then assigning the appropriate team to conduct the investigation, and then ultimately looking at the results and coordinating the remediation to deal with any issues that may have been identified.
So you worked now for 3 public companies, correct? Amazing. What have you found most challenging thus far?
That's an interesting question. So I would say, the traditional compliance officer answer, which does ring true for me, is we're in a resource constrained environment, right? So as a cost center, by contrast, as to a profit center in the private practice environment, we're always under pressure to manage costs. But I think the real challenge comes on the operational side. So as lawyers, I sometimes describe us as like the head of the octopus. So there's all these tentacles in the organization, and we have visibility to sales and operations and our corporate functions, and we're often the center of the information and typically the center of the problems, right? So we have visibility to where things aren't going right. So it's balancing that role of servant leadership where you want to stay connected, you want to be the go-to resource, you want to help support the business, but then also managing that day-to-day of your business plan and your strategic priorities each year because there is a full work world for both. So to be able to effectively build and maintain those relationships and stay close to the business while developing and implementing the strategic plan and helping ensure that you have the elements of an effective program in place really are where I see that primary challenge. And of course, you layer on the traditional resource constrained environments that we're almost always operating in.
And along those same lines, then, what have you liked the most about being in the compliance space and in your positions?
Yeah, so there's a few things. For me, it's that proactive lens that I talked about earlier in our conversation. The chance to get ahead of risk. Yes, things go wrong. Every day, we've got 28,000 people working around the world. There will be compliance failures. But to be in the position of helping the organization under complex legal concepts and translate that into what it means for your business and to help support a culture. So at Lineage, we have a phrase, red is good. And that's where if we've got a problem, our team comes together to look at what we know from what we've learned in the past that might help us solve the current problem and bringing the right subject matter experts to the table to solve the problem at hand. So I really love that being in that position of influencing positive change and then also being a translator, right? So our legal education and the world that we live in can be very complex. And oftentimes lawyers can lose their audience when they start talking in terms of legalese, right? Or even legal concepts. Or one of my least favorite things is when someone tries to scare a leadership team by, oh, look at these penalties, look at the potential risk here, right? We really need to get back to what will the impact have on the trust that we have with our customers. How do our employees engage with us if we're having this type of situation in the workplace? So that we're always coming back to our values in terms of how we're driving. And I think that that's the role of corporate compliance and ethics is to bridge the gap between what's required from a legal perspective and how do we translate that into the way that our business comes to work every day.
And what do you see on the horizon for compliance in companies like Lineage?
Yeah, so we know laws will always change and enforcement priorities will always evolve. So I think the role of corporate compliance and ethics in this space is to help the organization navigate those ongoing inevitable changes by staying focused on your values. The most recent example I can give is that the enforcement priorities around the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act have shifted for the US. Does that change our commitment to never pay bribes to engage in business? No. We do that because that's the right thing to do, and that is a values-based decision. So when you've got the organizational values centered around principles like trust, or being bold to speak up when you see something that isn't right, or servant leadership, where we come to work to support one another and create a workplace centered around respect, that helps center the org as those enforcement priorities evolve, as new laws and regulations come into the place. But that we're here to say, hey, are we sure that we're doing all of the right things to meet the new challenge with a change in enforcement priorities? Have we appropriately looked at what that means for the business? But always coming back and centering around a values-based approach to how we work.
Do you see AI having an effect on compliance, on your role, on your team's role?
Yeah, so one negative place where I'm seeing it, fortunately, I haven't encountered it yet in my particular organization, but there was an article I just read the other day about how people can use AI to take their compliance training and it will actually watch the course and take the quiz. So it's one of the questions I have for my training providers. What are we doing to get ahead of that and ensure that team members are actually completing their training? But on a positive front, helping us write our policies, right? Helping it be written in layman's terms and making it a very practical document. Our legal team's looking at it for how we can adopt it for playbooks, right? Contract management, contract intake. We're a REIT at our core. And so there's a lot of opportunity in terms of our lease agreements and all of the real estate management. So I see it as really there was a quote I heard the other day that AI will not replace lawyers, but AI or lawyers who use AI will replace lawyers who don't. And I think that that's so true. It's a tool that we can leverage to help us become more strategic and more efficient by helping eliminate the work that can be done well by a machine so that you can bring your legal skill set to the table on the more strategic issues. So I'm excited to see where the technology takes us. Our team's actively looking at tools. We've had a lot of fun playing with some demos, participating in Slack boards to see how other legal organizations are using it. And I think the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, as I told you before we started recording, a colleague of mine and myself we're getting into some. He's working on some legal technology roles. It's good to hear kind of what's on the
Yeah.
horizon, what's already in place, and where the needs might be. I want to switch gears for a minute. I know from conversations we've had in the past that you have built a great network of professional peers. Why is this so important to you, and how did you do this?
So, connection is one of my core values. I'm fiercely passionate about connecting people that I think can help one another or can simply benefit from getting to know one another. In fact, you and I are a great example of my approach to networking. There's a significant overlap between my personal and professional network. And for me, that network comes to life when those connections either start as a personal one and become professional, or start as professional and become personal. And a great example, Heidi Friedman was a a mentor to me when I was at Thompson Hine. We were baby lawyers at the time. She and April Boyes founded the Women in Spotlight leadership initiative there. And as I moved in house, I went through some difficult times in my personal life, and she was a true personal mentor to me, having navigated some of them herself. And then ultimately, I became a client of hers. And now we have a great professional working relationship, a personal relationship. And in fact, you and I met as part of that networking. So my approach is really to be curious, take a genuine interest in what other people do for a living, what brings them to life, when are they living their core values, when do they feel in their flow. There's such an opportunity to learn. And in the very specific corporate compliance and ethics space, it's an opportunity for us to share best practices. This can be a tough job. We see, quote unquote, how the sausage is made. We often see the most difficult parts of the organization do the types of investigations that we lead. And having a peer group that you can lean on just to validate the experiences, to learn from them about how they may have navigated a similar situation is a really beneficial aspect of or benefit from the networking. My approach to networking, it's very similar. I often talk to law students or college students about networking in the context of a job search and compare it to dating. If you walk into a bar and say, I'm looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it's pretty much an immediate turnoff. Similarly, if you walk into a networking event and say, I'm looking for a job, you're looking to pull and take from others. Whereas if you show up genuinely interested in others, take the time to talk to people and get to know them, they'll likely reciprocate and ask about you, and it'll give you a chance to share what you're working on, what you're interested. And ultimately, those connections may foster into something that does lead to a referral for you. And so it's just my general approach to life is really network oriented, based in that authenticity and genuine interest in others.
I love that. And I'm so glad that you shared this. Between the time I was an attorney and doing the legal recruiting that I'm doing now, I was a career counselor and I taught some job search workshops. And a big piece of that was networking. It is something that is really hard to teach. It does have to be genuine and authentic. And so important. I've found it so valuable throughout my career as you have and look forward to continuing to grow a network. It doesn't end, right?
That's right.
Keep going. So before we end today, I want to ask you a question that I always like to end with. If you were to go back in time and give yourself advice as an attorney who just passed the bar exam, what would it be?
The caveat there being just past the bar exam. Waiting for results would be a different set of advice, but it's something that my mom has said to me throughout life, and I never believe her when she says it, but it always turns out to be true, and that's everything will be okay. As lawyers, we are often faced with very complex challenges, typically high risk environments, and that's usually why we're being brought to the table. Whether there's something going on in your personal life, your professional life, you're starting a new career, considering a career change, the waters may be bumpy, but you need to remind yourself and reflect on your past to help prove to yourself that everything will be okay. Your job in the moment when things are difficult or scary or uncertain is to stay engaged. Look at what that opportunity may be trying to teach you. Reflect back on your prior successes and know that by engaging and seeking to learn, you will get through whatever's coming your way and you will end up not only okay, but almost 100% of the time way better than okay. So as I think back to getting the bar exam results, I was, working in a very busy law firm, long hours. I really didn't know what was next. I just knew that I was in a great place surrounded by good people working really hard. And so throughout the course of the last 20 plus years, as I've navigated my career, there's been bumps. Companies in particular have faced some serious economic challenges, but showing that you're engaged, staying intellectually curious, building and fostering a sincere network of both professional and personal contacts will help ensure that you're on the path so that everything turns out way better than okay.
I think your mom has great advice. I'm going to heed that advice as well. And I can't wait to see what's next for you. You've had a really
Thank you.
impressive career. I'm so glad you were able to share with us today your insights and your career path. Look forward to seeing what's next for you, Michelle.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for joining.
Shauna. I always enjoy our conversations, and I look forward to continuing to stay in touch with each other and sharing insights.
Absolutely. Thank you.